So we're just going to discuss the COUNTIFs function in this video. So what you've got to do is just decide when you're going to use just the COUNTIF function and when are you going to use the COUNTIFs function. So you only use a COUNTIF function if you have one criteria in the function that you have to use, but you use a COUNTIFs function if you have two or more criteria in your question. So for example, question number 1 here, this is just a normal COUNTIF question. It says count how many people are under the age of 50. So there's only one criteria. So we're dealing with ages, and the criteria here is going to be under 50 or less than 50. So just a reminder on how to do the COUNTIF. You would just go equals COUNTIF. The range is where you're looking through to find this criteria. So in other words, we're looking through the ages column. So you highlight from 10 to 20. And in this range or column, we are counting the number of ages that are under 50. So that's going to be our criteria. All the ages less than 50 is what we are counting in this range. So just remember you'd have quotations around your criteria. So you did enter, and it says 5. So if you count how many people are under the age of 50, you'll see that there are 5 people. So question 2 is where we are going to use a COUNTIFs function. So we have two criteria here. The ages of the people must be less than 50, and they must live in South Africa. So we're finding a number of people that are younger than 50 years old and live in South Africa. So there's two criteria, so COUNTIFs function. So to do this, you go equals COUNTIFs. So the criteria range 1. So let's do the first criteria. So the ages less than 50. So the range, so just like in the previous question, that was the age column and comma, and in that column we are counting how many times an age less than 50 occurs. So that's our criteria, less than 50. So that's the first criteria of this COUNTIFs function. So criteria range 2 and criteria 2 deal with the second criteria, which is that these people must live in South Africa. So now the second criteria range, well, that's got to do with the location. So we're going to look through the location column, comma, and the criteria is we are trying to count how many times we see the word South Africa in this column. So that's our criteria, so South Africa. So what this function is going to do, it's going to count how many people are less than 50 years old, and it's going to basically include the fact that those people must live in South Africa. So these are the people that are less than 50 years old and also live in South Africa. So if we hit enter, you can see there's one of them. Okay, so it's not Mary, she's not less than 50 years old, even though she lives in South Africa. But we have here Francois, he is 48 years old and lives in South Africa. So he's the only one, so there's only one person. So one more example. Count how many people are less than 50 years old, and they have to live in South Africa and earn more than the average income. So people younger than 50 that live in South Africa and earn more than the average income. Those are the people we're trying to count here. So we have 3 criteria this time. So it's COUNTIFs. So criteria 1, let's do the first criteria, which is the age again. So our range is going to be the age column. And our criteria, we're counting those people who are less than 50 years old. Criteria 2, They have to also live in South Africa, so the range is going to be the location. And the criteria for this range, we're trying to find where South Africa occurs. So we type in South Africa. And lastly, they have to earn more than the average income. So the range for criteria range 3 is going to be the income. And we are trying to find all of those incomes which are more than the average income. So our criteria here is going to be greater than this value, 8380.73. And that's it. So we should now see how many people are younger than 50 that live in South Africa that earn more than the average income. And there's one person. So you can just have a look and see if that makes sense. There should be one person that fulfills all of these conditions or criteria. But just out of curiosity, if you did not want to type in this value here for the average monthly income, and you wanted to just select the cell itself, what you'd have to do here is start with quotation, the symbol, but then you'd have to put the quotation again. So you only put quotations around the symbol that you're using in this criteria. And before we can click on this cell, we have to use the and symbol. Okay, because what's going to happen is if you try and click on the cell straight away, it might deselect your formula. You'll see it doesn't work anymore. Or it might give you an error if you are able to select it and hit enter. You'll see your formula might not work. So what we'd have to do before we click on it is use the and symbol and then select it. And you can see it's working now. And then hit enter. Okay, cool. So that is the COUNTIFs function. Please let me know if you have any questions.